Bioshock is now old enough to vote in America. Yes, it is now old enough to legally play the lottery, buy a car, and even get a tattoo. Indeed, at the time of this recording, the original Bioshock is 18 years old. Okay, look, my AARP card just came in the mail. It's almost hard to believe that the game that once shook the couches and chairs of gamers everywhere with its incredible storytelling is old enough to have lived a whole life of its own. But does Bioshock Remastered hold up in 2025? In many ways, yes. It absolutely does. Sup everybody, Ambro here, and today we're talking about Bioshock Remastered, which coincided with the release of the Bioshock Collection, and that package included both Bioshock 1 and Bioshock 2 Remastered, which released almost a decade ago in September of 2016. The original Bioshock released back in 2007. It's available on all platforms, including the Nintendo Switch, and it often goes on sale for under $10 US. So what are you waiting for? By the way, all the footage you see today was captured on my PC. Before we get started, please like, subscribe, and ring the bell to get allegedly instant notifications on when the next video drops. We are so close to 1,000 subs, and every bit of support to this small creator is greatly appreciated. So, Bioshock. This is one of my all-time favorite games, and for good reason. I must have played it a dozen times back on release on the good old Xbox 360, but I realized recently when I was scrolling through my Steam library that I hadn't played it on PC yet, which meant that I hadn't experienced the game as a grown adult, and I was curious to see if my view of the game had changed in any way, or if I would perceive things differently this time. I was genuinely curious to see if one of my favorite games of all time holds up, and luckily, it totally does.
I chose Rapture.
If you've somehow made it to today without playing this game, that's actually pretty amazing. I won't outright spoil the game for you in this video, but I will refer to the game's impactful writing and the way it's told to you, the protagonist Jack. Although I have to say, while there isn't a generally agreed upon time for how long a piece of media can exist before there's no excuse for not knowing the big secret, I do have to say that as of the time of recording this video, 18 years or more is a decently long time to somehow not know something in a pop culture reference. Even something as niche as a video game in a subgenre as niche as Bioshock and the Art Deco style of Rapture. Actually, saying that mouthful makes me rethink that, but I digress. The game's visual language, storytelling, and atmosphere is what makes Rapture feel so organic, fun, and easy to explore, but we will get to that shortly. I want to talk about the backstory and inspiration for Ken Levine's masterpiece because it's a really great listen. If you don't know who Ken Levine is, he began his journey at Looking Glass Studio in 1995, where he would work on pioneering games like Thief in 1998. He's more known for his modern work with Bioshock 1, Bioshock Infinite, and the upcoming game Judas. Levine actually passed on making Bioshock 2 back in the day in 2010. Levine is known for creating narrative-driven games that explore sociology and philosophical themes. His driver for creating Bioshock was he wanted something that questioned the player's agency and autonomy. He also explored concepts ranging from racial commentary to metaphysics within the worlds he creates. He always emphasizes storytelling in his games, and he has cited Mad Men, the Coen brothers, and Stanley Kubrick as his inspirations. As he and the team moved towards their 5-year development journey for Bioshock, supposedly the team went from a small team of 6 devs back in 2002 and would ramp up to a 60-person production, which by today's standards compared to any AAA studio is actually pretty small. Levine's vision was to create the spiritual successor to the System Shock series, which if you haven't played the original or the recent remakes of System Shock, they are excellent games in their own right. Now, before we move on to the meat and potatoes of the video, talking about the gameplay and the design and some more context for the setting, I did want to touch on one particular aspect of Bioshock, and that is the water. Water rendering in games has always been tricky, and so many tricks are used to fake the properties of water. But being that Rapture is literally underwater, the studio made it vital to the project that the water had to be as high quality as possible. They hired dedicated programmers and artists to specifically focus on this crucial element. The team also integrated Havoc physics for enhanced environmental interaction and ragdoll physics. These immersive elements, plus the choice of Art Deco for the Bioshock's visuals, were both driven by the look they wanted for the world as well as the context to make sense. Their lead animator, Sean Robertson, mentioned that the Art Deco style naturally has a lot of low-poly design, so it actually fit in perfectly for the hardware they are creating the game for. Rapture itself drew inspiration from New York City's skyline, particularly buildings like the Chrysler Building and the Empire State Building. One last thing before we move on to the next section, something you may not know is that in early of January 2007, before the game released, they had a playtest. 90% 80% of the game approximately was complete, but there was overwhelmingly negative feedback. The game almost didn't come out. Over what, you may ask? Well, playtesters called out how dark the game was. Not in terms of the plot, although it's dark as well, but players could literally not see enough of the game on the screen. Like, the game's inherent gamma or brightness was too low, or maybe the artwork was incorrectly lighted in a way that made everything appear overly dark. Another huge point of negative feedback was Atlas himself. Atlas is the character that pushes the play forward from the start of the game, and he had a southern accent instead of an Irish one.
Would you kindly pick up that shortwave radio?
Playtesters found that the southern accent led players to feel that he was distrustful. For what reasons, I don't know, but the studio made a quick pivot to change it to an Irish accent to make him seem more trustworthy, and that's ultimately the version that they went with. Now, with all of this backstory and information out of the way, let's move on to the actual gameplay and game design of Bioshock. I'm also going to pepper in a little bit more context of the setting so that it all becomes cohesive. And the reason I did this is because it's actually difficult to talk about the gameplay design without the context, because they are directly intertwined. But you'll see this as we keep going. Bioshock is indeed a linear story-based game, and with that, you feel a very steady pace of natural progression thanks to the devs' attention to detail. You play as Jack, a silent protagonist who finds himself stranded after a plane crash into the ocean. Upon surfacing from the crash, you notice a tower that leads you to the city of Rapture, and it was the only thing of civilization for miles, so, video game reasons, right? You're quickly introduced to Andrew Ryan, the founder of Rapture and the owner of Ryan Industries. He is a man of ideals more than a man of logic, but we'll get into that shortly. His recording explaining his philosophy plays in the background as you have probably one of the most iconic moments in gaming with the reveal of Rapture. As you're about to unboard the bathysphere, you witness your first taste of Rapture, as well as the start of your journey with Atlas. He will keep pushing you through the city as you try to help him save his family from the clutches of Andrew Ryan, as he puts it. You start off the game with a simple wrench, but you're quickly introduced to other guns and weapons, but most obviously, you'll soon come into contact with plasmids. Plasmids were created as the ultimate expression of Andrew Ryan's vision for unrestricted scientific progress and human enhancement. Born from the discovery of Adam in sea slugs, these serums that you regularly inject yourself throughout the game genetically modifies the user. These modifications promise to elevate humanity beyond its natural limitations, or at least that was their intent. Plasmids are what give you your various powers in the game, from being able to shoot lightning out of your hands, to setting things on fire with the snap of your fingers, to hypnotizing big daddies, and more. What's really amazing about Bioshock's combat and progression system is, if this game were to release today, people would probably praise it for its clever use of positive and negative effects to force you to actually make impactful choices when building up your character. Not only do you get a steady progression of new weapon types as you play through the game, but you also unlock different ammo types that do more or less damage depending on the enemy you're shooting at. Anti-personnel rounds are great for human enemies, while anti-armor rounds are great for turrets, bots, and big daddies. You'll obtain a range of weapons from a basic pistol to a machine gun, all the way up to heat-seeking rockets and a grenade launcher. But the weapon variety is just one piece of the puzzle. On top of plasmids that you have access to, which are limited by tonic slots, but we'll get into tonics in a second. In order to upgrade your weapons, you need to find power to the people stations. Instead of currency for this vendor, you get a single use out of each station that you find. There's one hidden one in most of the main levels in this game. I'm not sure exactly how many there are, but the game is broken up into sections that you travel between on the train. You go to an area, complete the objectives, take care of all the little sisters in the area, find your power to the people station, and then move on. Now, one really important point to make here regarding the combat is that you can only have one weapon or one plasmid out and ready to use at any given time. This was ultimately remedied in Bioshock 2 and Bioshock Infinite. If I'm being completely honest though, the game really doesn't feel bad to play even in 2025 due to how quickly you're able to swap between plasmid powers, weapons, and ammo types. On a controller, you just press the right trigger to swap out your gun and the left trigger to swap to your plasmids. You hold the right bumper or the left bumper, respectively, to open up the menus for either one. Upgrading weapons is just one way to do more damage. The main way you're going to increase your damage output is with the research camera. This takes up a gun slot and you start using it to take pictures of your enemies. The first picture of an enemy you've never captured before usually gives you a damage boost to that particular type of splicer or enemy. After each consecutive picture is taken of the same exact enemy, it will give you less and less points for that, so make sure you're taking pictures of different enemies each time you can to get the most points. As you continue to take pictures of all the different splicers, turrets, bots, and big daddies, you'll level up their research levels, which will give you buffs against those enemies for the remainder of the game. The combat in Bioshock 1, yeah, it definitely feels stiff by today's standards, but is not unplayable by any stretch of the imagination. Now, there is no sprinting, no sliding, or parkour. You just get a basic walk, crouch, and jump. All that being said, the combat is fine. But what really disrupts the flow of combat is hacking. Hacking is something you will do a lot throughout this game, and you can hack everything from turrets to alarm systems to flying bots to even fight on your side, but the hacking minigame is quite literally the game Pipe Dream. It's a classic arcade game from the early 90s. While this minigame was actually pretty novel at the time to help pad out gameplay, it's just not that exciting now. Don't get me wrong, I engage in it because I have to, and it's part of the game, but there are times when you'll be in the middle of a firefight, and you want to quickly hack something, and you don't have auto-hacking tools, which do exist in the game, by the way, but they're expensive to create, and you can only hold 5 of them at one time. So you have to completely change your mindset from Bioshock to Pipe Dream every time you do this, and it's just a bit jarring. Now, there are a lot of tonics and upgrades you can use to make hacking much easier, but it takes away from other aspects of your build. The game does have several difficulty options to scale for players as well, and the big thing you'll notice with this game is interactivity with the environment. The shock plasmid, which is actually the first plasmid you get in the game, shows that you can actually electrocute enemies who are standing in water if you zap the water. Same goes for spilt oil on the ground. You can ignite it and watch your enemies go up in flames. This organic way of incentivizing you to use your plasmids and all of your abilities is part of what makes Bioshock so much fun. Now, there's only one way to actually upgrade your plasmids in the game, and that is by extracting Atom from Little Sisters. To quickly recap, Atom is the substance found in sea slugs that was used to create the serum that makes plasmids. Atom is also highly addictive and was never regulated due to the beliefs of Andrew Ryan. Those addicted to Atom have become violent and, well, nuts, and are now known as splicers. Splicers are the heavily disfigured human enemies that you have to fight throughout the game. They were disfigured because of how Atom interacted with their native tissue cells and replaced them with unstable versions of those cells. Splicers only want one thing: your Atom. But as splicers are hunting for your Atom, you're hunting down those little sisters for theirs. Little sisters are protected by the big daddies, those big hulking creatures with dive gear all over them and sometimes a drill for a hand. Very handsome fellas. Now, in each area of the game, there are a designated number of little sisters to harvest or save. You are able to complete a level without tackling all of them, and the game will warn you, because if you leave that area, there's really no other reason for you to ever go back, as the game continually pushes you forward. Anyway, Big Daddies are easily the toughest enemies in the game. They are incredibly aggressive and never let up. You will use a large part of your arsenal to take these down. Now, once you've taken one of them down, you will come to the main choice that the game presents you with. You can either harvest all of the Atom out of that little sister, or you can save the little sister, preserving their life while giving you less Atom, which means less powers and less upgrades for your powers. What you should know is that within the game's lore, in 1946, after arriving in Rapture, Dr. Bridget Tenenbaum is the one who discovered the Atom in those sea slugs. And she observed the Atom's miraculous abilities by observing a dock worker's hand who was crippled and healed after being bitten by one. Now, with Frank Fontaine's backing, and you're going to hear a lot about Frank Fontaine shortly, Dr. Tenenbaum developed a method to dramatically increase Atom production by implanting the sea slugs into the stomach of little girls, creating the Little Sisters, who are orphan children who became living Atom factories while retaining their childlike behaviors despite extensive mental conditioning. Hey, I told you it was dark. Finally, Dr. Tenenbaum finally came to realize that what she had been doing was wrong when she watched little sisters play and behave as normal children despite their abhorrent circumstances. This led to her to develop a cure to safely remove the sea slugs and work to rescue them from their parasitic existence. You have the ability to rescue them, and if you do so throughout the game, and I mean save every single little sister, you will get the good ending of the game. If you harvest all the little sisters, you will get the bad ending, and if you save at least one little sister and harvest at least one, you will get a bad ending, but slightly less bad. Again, not my place to spoil those endings for you, but just know that they exist. Now let's quickly talk about balancing and tonics for a second, because I don't think I've made the progression and passive system entirely clear. So as you go through the game, you'll be able to collect passive abilities called tonics. You have several different categories of tonics, from engineering tonics to combat tonics. You place a tonic in an open slot that you need to purchase from a gatherer's garden, which are these vending machines that you buy the new plasmids from, as well as upgrading your existing ones. What's really great about how the tonic system works is how they are designed to make you compromise. While there are tonics that are universally positive, you don't have an unlimited amount of tonic slots. So if I'm going through a playthrough where I prefer to make a melee build and use the wrench as my main weapon, I can do that. But this also means that my effectiveness with guns won't receive any positive benefits either. Alternatively, I can make a build where I try to hack everything and I do a lot less fighting because NPCs, bots, and turrets are all doing the fights for me. Speaking of NPC behavior, despite the game being built for the Xbox 360 and PS3 generation limited hardware, the enemy behavior was always actually pretty great in this game. You can find splicers mutilating bodies and ransacking a locked up store, and even fighting big daddies for their coveted little sisters. Splicers are everywhere, and you can even hear them. The audio in this game is often quite chilling because you can just hear the cackling of an addicted splicer around the corner. Sometimes you go into a new area and you'll just see a big daddy gang messed up by a group of splicers, or vice versa. I know this seems like a really small feature by today's standards, but back in the day, this helped to make Rapture feel like a real place. The immersion of Bioshock is excellent. You do have a basic health bar and atom bar for plasmid use. You can heal at any time using the various health stations scattered around a level or a first aid kit. But this does cost money, and I think that's actually what makes playing Bioshock so great and so engaging. It forces you to engage in these systems where healing isn't free. It actually makes me consider if I need to buy more ammo or more health for the next section. I should also mention though that death is pretty lenient in this game, and it's also handled in a cool way. As you're going through a level, you'll see these Vita chambers, which are literally respawn points for after you die. When you die, there's no game over screen or anything. You just have this animation where you warp back to the latest Vita chamber that you walk by, and you can walk out. It does force you to retrace your steps to get you to where you were before, but it's not that penalizing otherwise. The game is about 15 to 20 hours long, I'd say, based on personal experience. If you just bum rush the story on the easiest difficulty and don't explore around, you might be able to get through it in 10 to 12, but I'm really spitballing there. But let's get back to Rapture really quickly. As Rapture faced multiple mounting crises, Ryan began abandoning the very principles upon which he had founded the city. One really notable character that I spoke about before that you will hear about over and over again as you read and listen to the in-game lore is Frank Fontaine. Frank Fontaine emerged as a major rival throughout Rapture with his legitimate businesses and charitable work, and Andrew Ryan actually violated his own free market ideals by nationalizing Fontaine Futuristics after staging Frank Fontaine's apparent death. Now, this action was seen by many citizens as proof that Ryan had become the very type of authoritarian he sought to escape. Keep in mind, a lot of the scientists that Andrew Ryan brought down into Rapture were Holocaust survivors. They were German Jewish scientists. One of the most damaging to Ryan's credibility with his implementation of a pheromone-based mind control were Dr. Tenenbaum as well as Dr. Yi Su Chong. Dr. Yi Su Chong worked with Andrew Ryan and altered the commercially available plasmids to make citizens susceptible to mental manipulation through those airborne pheromones. This represented the ultimate betrayal of his philosophy as it robbed the city of its free will. This literally directly contradicts everything that he stood for. The game illustrates how completely unregulated markets can fail catastrophically. Without any oversight, dangerous products like Atom were marketed without safety testing, which created a public health crisis. The absence of regulation also enabled criminal enterprises to flourish, as there were no mechanisms to prevent fraud, coercion, or violence in regular business dealings. And that's the irony of it all, right? Ryan himself became the authoritarian that he sought to escape. When faced with challenges to his authority, he implemented the very types of control he originally opposed: nationalizing businesses, imposing curfews, imprisoning political dissidents, and using mind control. This demonstrates what critics argue is the inevitable result of attempting to maintain order in a complex society without legitimate governmental structures. While there is so much more I could talk about Bioshock and Andrew Ryan's Rapture and its descent into chaos, I don't want to go too deep here, and instead I want to focus on the main message of the game and why it's still so impactful all these years later, especially as an adult. Andrew Ryan's Rapture represents a cautionary tale of the dangers of ideological extremism and the practical limitations of pure free market capitalism. While Andrew Ryan genuinely believed he was creating a paradise for human achievement, his refusal to acknowledge the need for regulation, safety nets, and moral constraints led to the city's destruction. Bioshock currently stands as both an engaging narrative and a sophisticated philosophical argument about the balance between individual freedom and collective responsibility in modern society. It is one of the many reasons you should absolutely play this game today if you somehow haven't. But that's going to do it for this video. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed it. If you did enjoy it or find it informative, please hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell to get allegedly instant notifications on when the next video drops. Please let me know your thoughts about Bioshock. Did you play the original back in the day? Are you somehow playing it for the first time now? Or are you just a huge fan of the franchise? Sound off down in the comments and let's talk. As always, this is Ambro, keeping you plugged into the games that matter. Peace out.